We do not want to make it accessible for people to take actions to eliminate the divine image when they are in a moment of despair. On the contrary, those terrible options of murder should not be available. Instead, what should be available is loving, warmth, kindness, support, financial support. The very first commandment that God Almighty commands to every single human being, starting with the first man and woman, is to bring beautiful children into the world. And that goes to every single human being, wherever they're from. They're all descended. Every one of us is descended from the first man and the first woman. And God Almighty's vision is a world teeming with human beings. And it's an impossibility in God's vision that any of those human beings should be erased, whether it's erased after they're already a living, walking human being, or erased even potential. And why is that the case? Because every single human being is created in God Almighty's image. And the imprint of God Almighty's image on the face and in the person of the human being, and in our souls and our intellect and in our emotions, is such that every single human being is considered like an entire world. And eliminating any human being is as if the whole entire world is destroyed. And when one human being is saved, it's saving an entire world. So, therefore, we have to see the importance of bringing children into the world, bringing new human beings into the world, so that the world will be populated and teeming with wonderful human beings, recognizing and serving God Almighty. And it's a terrible, terrible misunderstanding when people think that it's somehow okay to eliminate the divine image developing in the womb of a woman just because it does not yet have self-sufficiency and the ability to breathe and the ability to see and hear outside the womb. Already it has many of those abilities within the womb, but the key is that there's a false debate over when does life start, as if somehow this thing is not living until a certain point in time. And that's really a false argument, a false discussion. Because the reality is life does not begin at any point during pregnancy. Life is a continuation. Life started when God Almighty started life, and life continues every single cell that's pulsating and continues life from moment to moment. That is the continuation of life, and it's not permissible for us to eliminate human life. Even if it is still not fully developed, it is already a human life that is bringing the divine image into the world, and therefore it's even forbidden to engage in activities that are going to prevent a conception from happening. How much more so actually eliminating a conception and causing an abortion is an act of murder. And it's erasing the divine image from the world. And therefore we have to recommit ourselves and reconnect ourselves to God Almighty's vision. This is not a debate about details. This is a debate about what is, does a person see God Almighty's vision. And we have nothing to debate because God Almighty is the one that created us with this innate drive to bring more people in the world. And our job is not to override that drive with all kinds of calculations and all kinds of reasoning to try to say that the number of people should be limited or therefore they should be prevented from coming into being. The elderly should be eliminated. The unborn should be eliminated. These are all ways of taking us away from God Almighty's vision. So our divine mission in the world, each one of us, for every single human being, is to carry this message forward, to encourage every human being to bring more children into the world. That is the job of every human being. That is the mission of every human being, is to bring more children into the world. And abortion is something that goes squarely in the face, not only of the commandment, be fruitful and multiply, but against the commandment to murder. Now, one of the terrible things that's being done is a sophisticated campaign to try to co-opt the Jewish people into advocating, even Torah observant Jews, to have them advocate for access to abortion, on the idea somehow that there could be a situation where if a woman is in danger because a pregnancy threatens her life, then in very limited circumstances in Torah, it would be possible for placing precedence of the mother's life such that just like a person who's acting in self-defense is allowed to take action to defend his life against someone who is pursuing him to kill him, in the very extremely rare case where a fetus would be putting the mother's life in danger, then it would be possible in those exceptionally rare circumstances under Torah law to end the pregnancy, It would be a great, great tragedy, and everything possible is done to avoid that. However, that slight possibility, that slight precedence given to the mother's life, that's a precedence given to the mother's life, but a very slight opportunities for that to come actually to be applied in actual practicality because of the rarity of an actual threat to the mother's life from a fetus. But that, unfortunately, is being used to suddenly claim by religious, Torah-observant Jewish women that they have a religious right under the First Amendment to access to abortion just in case if they're pregnant and their lives are endangered from pregnancy, they need to have access to an abortion. And this is simply a great attempt at deception by those who advocate abortion to try to confuse people. First of all, to disguise to them the fact that the abortion laws, even those that prohibit it, do have exceptions for medical emergencies. So there's no risk of a person's religious right to being overridden here. The other thing is we have to realize that every person has to realize that we're balancing a case of extremely rare case when we compare it to the 63 million human beings that have been eliminated since the legalization of abortion in the United States of America. We're talking about a grave error to suggest that abortion should be legalized and broadly available for the very, very rare case that's already always legally exempted from the laws against abortion, which would, if you create a broad opening for it, you're leading to the murder of tens of millions of human beings. It makes no sense according to Torah whatsoever to even speak in the way that is being spoken, and unfortunately people are misleading the Jewish people and misleading the world into thinking that somehow abortion is a Jewish right or abortion is nuanced. There's no nuance at all. It's very simple. Abortion is murder. And as a matter of fact, when a woman, if God forbid, needs to terminate her pregnancy because of the danger posed by the fetus, it's not called an abortion. If that is like an act of self-defense, is not called murder. That is the primacy of self-defense means that it's no longer in the category of murder. And if a woman needs to end the pregnancy in very rare circumstances that, according to Torah, permits her to do that, it is not considered an act of murder, but it does not permit other endings of pregnancy just because a person chooses to do so. And the fact of the matter is the Torah does not permit any consideration whatsoever to be given to other circumstances. It's no basis for a woman's, whether it's convenient for her, whether she is feeling that it's something that she wants to take on right now, her career, her priorities. This is not a choice that's given to any human being. It's not about women's rights. It's about the right to know that God Almighty created you and me in His image, and this developing fetus is a carrier of the divine image and therefore cannot be eliminated. No one has the right to do that. Not a man and not a woman. There's no inequality here. The fact of the matter is that this conception is required to be brought to term, because this is the purpose that we are brought into the world, is to be fruitful and multiply and bring more beautiful human beings into existence. We are standing now at the eve of Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is not merely the quote-unquote Jewish New Year. It is the New Year for all mankind, because it celebrates the creation of the first man and the first woman. Adam and Eve were created on Rosh Hashanah, and that's the day that we celebrate every year. And the very first act of Adam and Eve was to recognize God Almighty and to begin the process of procreation and bring more human beings into the world, to follow God's great vision and to express gratitude for being alive by bringing more life into the world, because every human being is worth being replicated. That's the ultimate statement of our self-worth, is to bring into the world more people just like me and just like you. That's the ultimate statement of our own sense of value of who we are. And therefore, that's the primary priority in every person's life, is to stay on track and stay focused on this. Rosh Hashanah comes along, and our job is to recognize that every human being needs to be made aware that he's created in God Almighty's image. Any thought of killing another human being, whether it's a person walking around, whether it's a person who's ill in bed, and whether it's a person who's elderly, whether it's a human being developing in her mother's womb, and if there's a woman who's unsure of whether she could financially sustain a pregnancy or sustain a child after the child is born, then it's the job of all of us to contribute generously to make sure that her expenses are paid through the giving of tzedakah. We should be giving at least 10%, if not to, and maybe even up to 20%. Is very much encouraged to give 20% of our income to helping other people, both spiritually and physically. We're not talking about just leaving this woman to her own devices to be able to take care of this child. We have an obligation as individuals. Each one of us has an individual obligation to consecrate at least 10% of our income to helping other people spiritually and physically. And certainly it would be a good thing to give 20% of our income to help other people spiritually and physically. So there's no concern here that a person is going to actually have a chance to be left alone and feel left alone and unable to support this child. If we just devote our efforts into caring about them and hearing their fears and supporting them and gathering the funds necessary to give them the certainty that they'll have the things that they need to do, especially in a situation where you have a woman that is bringing a child into the world where the father is not available and not participating in the raising of the child or providing income for the child and providing income for the mother and the support of the child and so forth. And how much more so that our charitable money, our portion of the God-given gift of abundance that He gives us should be consecrated into the service of God Almighty by giving it to help people bring more children into the world. That is the greatest use of the money that we have. So God willing, we should take Rosh Hashanah as an opportunity to re-accept upon ourselves that God Almighty is our King. God Almighty is the King of all of humanity. God Almighty is the one who gives us life, and He gives us the gift of life and the insight to see what life is really about and to transcend our calculations, to be able to see that the godliness in ourselves, the godliness in the next person, the godliness in creation, and to know that our job is to live according to that, regardless of the limited human logic, the limited human observation, and the limited and faulty human measurements. Those are irrelevant in God's vision. God's vision is to follow His command and bring more children into the world and make sure that every child and every human being, whether at the stage of development in its mother's womb or is growing up or already an adult or later on a person who's unable to protect themselves, an elderly person who's been who's ill and unable to fend off the threats and the pressures, that they also have to be protected from being eliminated from the world. That's our job as human beings. That's our highest calling, is to promote God's mission, to promote the life of human beings, to defend the life of human beings, and to encourage and support bringing more human beings to the world. That is the true message of Rosh Hashanah. And God willing, we should all celebrate the ultimate redemption of mankind from our crooked and despairing thinking and limited and scarcity thinking, that we should be redeemed from that, so that we will see that we live in an abundant world where there's enough of everything for everybody, and it needs only that we recognize that and give from what we have to help other people and support and give an encouraging word and make sure that when a person's in despair, that the things that they would do out of despair are not accessible to them. We do not want to make it accessible for people to take actions to eliminate the divine image when they are in a moment of despair. On the contrary, those terrible options of murder should not be available. Instead, what should be available is loving, warmth, kindness, support, financial support, and encouragement, and a great big smile and a great big words of encouragement. Good for you for bringing another child, another human being into the world. So each human being is an essential part of God's creation, and we need every single human being to contribute their part to bring their special, unique aspects into the world. That's why God Almighty has created so many human beings, because each one is needed for his and her unique contribution. And bringing a child into the world recognizes that we are not here by accident. We are here as part of the divine plan, and we're here as part of the increasing of the human enterprise of the existence of human beings in this world, because that's how God has created us. God has decreed it. May we all merit that speedily in our days, that ultimate redemption, when we're going to, all flesh, all human beings are going to recognize God Almighty, and we will live in abundance and in prosperity for every single human being. May it happen now. Happy and a sweet, prosperous, healthy new year for everyone.